We're wrapping things up in the regular season in Texas high school football, and it's going to come down to a very exciting conclusion, I think. Well, with Ryan Osborne, I'm Travis Brown, DFWVarsity.com, and we had some pretty epic moments last week. First, we'll start with Arlington Heights and Fort Worth South Hills, who was looking like it was going to be a very strong defensive team versus a very strong offensive team, and there was just a lot of offense.
Yeah, I think we expected going into it. Deion Hare-Griffin, Heights' quarterback, who had 393 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns. We knew what he could do on the ground, as well as Trayson Wallace, South Hills. He had over 100 yards rushing, over 100 yards passing. So I wasn't surprised by by as much offense as we saw. I was surprised that South Hills literally did not get one stop except for 2 turnovers. They forced 2 fumbles and 1 near the goal line, so it could have even gotten a little more out of hand. So I think South Hill's moving forward. They're going to have to tighten down their defense, at least to force some punts. Heights didn't punt one time, and Heights, Hare-Griffin played the game of his life, and it's also something that it wasn't too surprising either, because we've seen this the last 2 years out of him. He was a starter as a sophomore last year, and now Heights is, if they haven't clinched a district title yet, they basically have. They got to win this week against Trimble Tech, I believe, and they should clinch the district title in that top seed in Division I out of 7-5A.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't surprised that Heights was able to win this. I was a little surprised that they won it basically by outshooting one of the best offenses in the area. So that was an impressive win by them. And then quickly we had the big national TV event, Cedar Hill knocking off DeSoto 65-42.
Yeah, it was the DeMarcus Lodge show. I mean, Justin McMillan is an LSU commit, Cedar Hill's quarterback. So he's good. He's obviously got a good guy throwing to him. But McMillan, even when he underthrew a few balls into the DeSoto secondary, Lodge always found a way to make a play. We saw this last year in the state championship game against Katy. He is the best receiver in the country, and I'm not sure how someone could dispute that, because he just makes plays, and he's even grown a little bit too the last couple of years too. He's up to that 6'3". He has that build of a big receiver, and of course his recruitment's going to be followed until he was committed to A&M, and now he's opened his recruitment back up. But yeah, it was the Lodge show, and it was also impressive by Cedar Hill to go into DeSoto, a team they haven't beaten in 3 years, and kind of knock off what's been the top dog in that area, the Battle of the Beltline.
Lodge also caught the eye of Sports Center top plays over there as well after the game. That was an impressive night for them. Well, let's get into next week's games, and we have a pretty important one in that same district with one of those same teams, Mansfield at Cedar Hill.
Cedar Hill is going to win this game because they're the better team. They're one of the top 5 teams in the state. Mansfield's a solid program, a team that will probably make the playoffs if they can beat Midlothian in the final week of the season. But Mansfield's coach, I think he kind of realized they're playing with a little bit of house money, because they beat South Grand Prairie by 21 points last week, 49-28, an impressive win. They knew they had to get one win out of DeSoto, South Grand Prairie, and Cedar Hill, and getting one is an accomplishment in itself, because that's a tough 3-game stretch. So even if they lose this game this week, which I think they will, they'll have a chance to come back in the final week of the season in what will essentially be a play-in game between them and Midlothian. Duncanville is still in it. There's some tiebreaker scenarios, but it looks like Mansfield is going to control their own destiny, even if they do lose this week against Cedar Hill.
Right. And some switching that they did in the running back and defensive secondary, started the season switching Julius Lewis to the defensive secondary. I believe switched him back.
No, he's still playing defensive back, but he got him 4 carries and he had over 100 yards. Mm-hmm. So they're being selective with the TCU commit, and he's proven to be explosive.
A little more action on offense than maybe previously seen this year, and he took advantage of it this week and really put up some big numbers. Next, we have Colleyville Heritage versus Coppell. It's kind of that those maybe second tier teams in that division of our district of doom, really fighting and making sure they can solidify those final 2 playoff spots.
Yeah, Coppell, like we mentioned before we started the show, Coppell can lose out, and their playoff standing isn't really going to be effective. Heritage, but on the other hand, they need to win this week to avoid, because if they, like you said, if they lose to Richland next week, they could be out, and that's not really what you expect from this Heritage program. And I think, but they're also in a tough district too. So if they could sneak a win here and clinch a playoff berth, that would be, I'm sure Darren Allman, their first-year coach, would be very pleased with that.
Mm-hmm. I was at Coppell and Trinity last week. I was very surprised at the ability to both throw the ball and run the ball that Coppell had.
Yeah.
I was pretty set on the fact that they were pretty one-dimensional in their running game with their running back West and on, but they were able to throw the ball, and we're putting a little pressure on Trinity in the second half with their ability to move the ball down and throw the ball. It's very impressive, but Heritage is a great team and really put it to South Lake Carroll in the first half last week. I have Heritage coming out in this one, but what should be a very close game, and it might kind of turn out to be a little bit of a shootout. And then finally, we have Lancaster versus Arlington Seguin.
Yeah, I think this is a game where Seguin can win and clinch a playoff spot, but really it's going to come down to Seguin in the final week of the season against Lake Ridge. In fact, I'm not sure if they're guaranteed a playoff spot with a win, but they could lose this game to a good Lancaster team, a team that will clinch a playoff spot with a win. Seguin will go into the final week of the season and go up against a Lake Ridge team that if they beat Summit this week, then that's going to make it the stakes even higher for that final playoff spot. So this is a chance for Seguin to give itself some breathing room heading into the final week of the season, but it's not a must-win as far as playoff scenarios go.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I like Lancaster in this one. Real quick, give a little look in on Keller and Keller Fossil Ridge, and another important one this week.
Yeah, Keller, if they win this game, they'll clinch a playoff spot, which will be big for that program. Carl Strelo took over 2 years ago. They went 3-7, then 5-5 last year, and now they have a chance to win, beat Keller Fossil Ridge, and finish probably second in that district to Denton Geyer, which would be a huge accomplishment. Fossil Ridge, on the other hand, kind of dug themselves in a hole, losing to Geyer, losing to Ryan. But I think they can get back on the right track. They beat Central last week, which is always a big win within the Keller ISD. If they could get a win, probably cushion themselves a little bit. I'm not sure if it would guarantee the playoff spot, but it would definitely make it more likely than not, which, 2 weeks ago, it was kind of in question for this team, which we expected a lot out of them this year after a playoff run last season.
Mm-hmm. I think Keller has kind of taken the spot that most people thought Keller Fossil Ridge would be in this year.
Yeah,
and
they
kind
really
of
have.
Taken that role in the district. Keller Fossil Ridge has proven to be a little bit, actually, kind of a lot one-dimensional, so if you can stop that run, it's going to be a tougher go for them offensively, I think. Keller Fossil Ridge has put them in itself in a good spot, like you said, with that win last week against Keller Central in overtime, but Keller should take this one. All right, let's go no huddle. First, we have Euless Trinity at Richland.
I'll go with Trinity.
Richland. I'm going to go Trinity in that one as well. Mansfield Lake Ridge versus Mansfield Summit.
I'll go with Summit.
I'm going to go with Summit in that one as well. Fort Worth Trimble Tech versus Fort Worth Arlington Heights.
Heights. I think they stay undefeated.
You can go Heights in that one. And Cleburne versus Burlington Centennial.
I'll go with Centennial.
I'm going to go with Cleburne in that one. Well, that's our high school huddle for this week. Be sure to go out and catch the ending of regular season here in the next couple of weeks of high school regular season play. Come back and check the best stories and recaps and stats from those games at dfwvarsity.com, and we'll see you next week in the high school huddle.